Day to Voices Resilience Symposium. And I want to begin by thanking everyone affiliated with Kean University for hosting today's event. In particular, I want to thank Dr. Christine Thorpe, the Dean of the Nathan Weiss Graduate College, as well as Dr. Barry Mascari and Dr. Jane Weber, who I've known for many years, and they've been so generous with their time and offering the space and working collaboratively on today's event. So I'm going to ask Dr. Mascari to come up and introduce Dean Thorpe.
So Dr. Christine Thorpe is the new dean at the Nathan Weiss Graduate College. Long story short, Dean Thorpe starts on Monday. I know her for about 5 minutes. I hand her the card, and she says, I want to be there. I want to welcome people, which to us was really exciting. Her research interests include the impact of historical traumas on public health. So when she heard about this event, she's a really strong supporter of what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm really pleased to have her here and get to know each other as this process unfolds. So, Dr. Thorpe?
Thank you very much, Dr. Mascari, and welcome to all of you. We are really grateful to have you all here for this symposium. Kean University is very proud to be the host institution of the Voices of Resiliency Symposium, and we're pleased because this is a symposium that mindfully addresses resilience and strength in the face of trauma. And we're excited because this coming fall, there's going to be a new PhD in counseling program here at Kean University, which focuses on trauma. And the program will generate research on effective approaches for helping those with traumatic histories. So to have this kind of focus with a doctoral program is really critical and speaks to the changes that we've been seeing in our society that need to be addressed, particularly within this profession. So the program slogan is Preparing Compassionate Trauma-Informed Professionals. And this mission captures what drives our faculty to produce the leaders in this field. I want to take a moment to thank Mary Fetchet. I want to thank your team and the FealGood Foundation, because you're all responsible for organizing this phenomenal event that we're really glad to have here at Kean University. And I really want to give a special thank you to Dr. Weber and Dr. Mascari and all the Kean conference staff, because through their efforts, we're able to have this here, and we're looking forward for continued support going forward. I really appreciate your commitment to this, Dr. Weber and Dr. Mascari. And because of their involvement in 9/11 activities and knowing so many people that have been touched, this has changed their lives, changed all of our lives, and we're really grateful to be able to have this forum. So I thank you all for being here today. I'm certain you'll get a lot out of the day, and it's a pleasure to be able to serve you. Take in as much as you can and share it with others. Enjoy.
Thank you, Dr. Thorpe, and I just want to say how much we appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with the university, and thank you for your support. And that program that you're launching seems very exciting because it's well needed. As we know, not a week goes by without another traumatic event happening. First, I'd like to recognize our sponsors. I see John Feal back there. I want to thank John and the FealGood Foundation, Turk and Health, LLP, of course, the World Trade Center Health Program for making today's event possible. A couple of housekeeping items. Please silence your phone. I also want to make sure you're aware that today's events will be recorded and be posted on our websites. If you look at the back of your schedules, you'll see there are a list of exhibitors on the back. We'll have plenty of time for breaks during the day to visit with them, and I encourage you to do that. This morning's presentations will be held in this room, And then at 11 a.m., we're going to move up to the 6th floor for peer-to-peer roundtables, and we're organizing them based on, if you're a family member, a responder, a survivor, a service provider, and so forth. And that will give you a chance to talk amongst each other on where things are today for you, which is you as a representative of that community. We'll remain on the 6th floor and have lunch there, and then following lunch, we'll move back down to the 5th floor, and we'll have the breakout sessions. And then thanks to Barry and Jane, we'll end the day with a mindfulness exercise. It's very tough material that we're talking about, and we always like to end the day, just to take that time to take the deep breath before we get in our cars and get out into the traffic on Friday afternoon. For those of you that have registered for CEs, make sure that you've signed in at the front desk. You're required to be here for the full day, so sign out, and then you'll be given your certificate. And also, I encourage you to use social media. And if you've not done so, if you follow our Facebook and Twitter pages and share our post today, or take photos and tag us in the photos. I think that helps get the word out. And then, of course, when these films are online, people are going to be able to have access to information. Many people, particularly the responder community that are so sick, it's really challenging them to travel. So we wanted to make sure that we were making the information available to them, and thanks to John Feal and the FealGood Foundation. So I'm going to begin. It's interesting when you host a conference, you don't really talk about your work. You're presenting the work of so many of our wonderful colleagues, some that we've had long-time relationships, some that we've just met. And one thing that I find that is just remarkable, most of you, I'm sure, are aware that my husband and I lost our 24-year-old son, Brad, on 9/11, and I was a clinical social worker at the time. And oddly enough, I had done a lot of research on the response to traumatic events after hearing a woman speak that lost her daughter in the Oklahoma City bombing. And this was before you could search online. I actually traveled from Connecticut to Columbia University, where I did my graduate work. And Betty Pfefferbaum out of Oklahoma City was the one that had done the major research on the response and the impact that it had on their community. But what she said afterwards is the thing that struck me. It's a very powerful film that began with the Murray Building and ended with the response to the attacks and walking through the memorial that was created there. But she also talked about the rippling effect in the broader community. They had a higher incidence of depression, anxiety, suicide, substance abuse, job loss, and all the related factors when you have a mental health complications. And so I became part of what is the response team at the mental health clinic that I worked with. So I never went back to the clinic, but the people that I worked with had responded to events like the shootings in Newtown. So when I went to the Family Assistance Center in New York, it just struck me. That was a moment for me where I realized how complicated it was for people to find information. I realized that many of the women that had lost their husbands and were caring for children would not be able to be traveling and obtaining the information. That was like a printing press in the Family Assistance Center because things were changing so rapidly, and there were many complicated issues that the families had to navigate. So that really was the beginning of when we started holding meetings in our home for the Connecticut families. and then got our first office and hired our first staff in November of 2002. But our mission was really to address the long-term, to provide access to mental health care. As you may know, people lived around the country and in 90 countries abroad, so they couldn't necessarily go to a support group in Manhattan. And then to connect them with other resources. Also to commemorate the lives lost. We work very closely with other families and what's now become a memorial. And then more recently to assist communities impacted by other events. And so we provided, as it evolved over time, but we provided a wide range of services and really focused on coordinating the services and helping families navigate how they could access those resources. So because of my social work background, we really looked at a holistic approach to providing services. And there are so many things that fell outside the realm of mental health issues, but unresolved caused mental health issues. So a lot of the programs, including the workshops and conferences, but our annual conference that we started in New York City in September of 2002, and we're still hosting that again, every year. But we have, the content's changed over time because in the beginning it was really about the Red Cross and the Salvation, the Army, the quilters, the artists, all the people that were providing some kind of service to the families. And now that there's been 17 years, we actually have broader issues that families and now the responders and survivors need. The Living Memorial Project, we launched that in 2000 for the 5th anniversary. We realized at that point that families were not, many stuck. The museum had not been built yet, and how could we help them commemorate? We had heard about foundations they had established, organizations that they had established, and as being part of that process and planning for the memorial, I realized that space was an issue, and I felt very strongly that you couldn't represent a person with one photograph. And so our team, Stephanie, as one of the leaders, dragged, large scanners and computers around, and they actually collected over 84,000 photographs, meeting with families multiple times. So when the memorial was built, we were able to gift copies of those photographs with the family's permission. And then, of course, our work with the World Trade Center health program. It's been 6 years that we are working with John and the other outreach partners to promote the clinical centers that are available. There are a lot of, as you find with any tragedy, there's a lot of advocacy issues. For me, I was very interested in streamlining the process for the notification of remains. There's still 1,000 families that have never been notified. We've been notified 6 times of our son's remain. How do you deal with that? The Victims' Compensation Fund was a very complicated and emotional process. We became involved with, there were 12 of us that spent a lot of time going back and forth to Washington to push for the 9/11 Commission. And those years of work actually resulted in sweeping intelligence reforms. And then John and his team, we weren't by his side only a couple of times when we were in Washington, not near the advocate that John was, but certainly we recognized that 9/11 was well beyond our families. And I think the tendency after 9/11 was to say, the spouses, the children, and the parents, they were affected, and there was this imaginary line built, and the rest of the people are A-OK. Well, we realized that that was not the case, and we started hearing early on about the cancers, about the mental health issues, that these people, and certainly we never anticipated, we were so thankful for what the responders did, and just devastated to know that there were severe consequences to working down at the site. And then there was no sense of long-term needs. For many years, that's been my mantra with the government, because when events happen, they're in and out within a very short period of time. There's no funding available. And so it really relies on organizations like ours that independently raise money and provide the support and that continuity of care that's so important. Some of the initiatives, we've completed one scientific research project where we interviewed, it was a long survey of 600 families, and that was completed in March of 2016. That's going to be, we're publishing a couple of papers, and that's in the process now. We're actually doing a follow-up project where we're building the narrative now around each of the findings that we found in the research. In 2011, we received a grant from the OVC because we said there were no best practices, and these events were happening one after the other and the same mistakes being made. So we went to Oklahoma City, Virginia Tech, Northern Illinois University in Tucson, Arizona, and we just about completed that product when Newtown happened. Yet we couldn't turn it over because it took another year for the federal government to vet it. But we used a lot of that information to share with them. And then we took it a step further and developed a 2-day training, and adding into it the mental health complications and the service providers and law enforcement, and how you can avoid the impact responding to an event has on individuals, and of course the effects it has on the workforce. And then the Center of Excellence is really an overall initiative where we're building public-private partnerships and working with subject matter experts, like many of the people that are going to be presenting today. And we feel that things cannot be done by one organization, and that we can all make an important contribution, but it's really working collaboratively together and making interventions at different levels. I mean, some people might call a mental health clinic, others may not. And so to have a nonprofit organization that is focused on mental health care, but understands all the other complicated issues, sometimes it's a much healthier and welcoming intervention. And so this is just sort of a summary. This is our 26th conference today. We've worked with the responder and survivor community. I think we're more like 155,000 hours of social work support. We have a great internship program. What are we up to now? I think we had 150, and we have another 10 coming in in the coming weeks and over the summer. And then we've are committed for 16 years. We collected the 84,000 photographs. And I don't know the hundreds of organizations that we've worked collaboratively with over the years, but it's an honor to be here at Kean University and to be here with you today. So the next thing I'd like to do is, when I think about introductions, some people need no introduction, and John Feal falls into that category. If you're part of the 9/11 community or have worked with responders or survivors, you're very familiar with John's tireless advocacy efforts in implementing the Zadroga legislation to provide medical and mental health services for those who deserve our care, the responders and the survivors. And Voices had the opportunity to work with John and our other outreach organizations, and we appreciate his support of today's event. So I'm going to ask John Feal to come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. You guys can all hear me, right? Yes. Good. Yesterday, me and Mary were in a meeting in the city. And without saying too much, we're going to have a monument built at Ground Zero. So I'll leave it at that, at the 9/11 memorial. But we were talking, and the word resiliency was used during that meeting. And to me, resiliency represents New Yorkers. Really, it represents people, human beings. We're resilient. Whether it's a traumatic event or just your everyday living, we're resilient. Our body's resilient to illnesses, we fight it. Traumatic event, we try to move on. But in our own way, we're all resilient. Mary's resilient. She lost her son. She started something. And look what she's done, her body of work and her team. I spent 11 weeks in the hospital. Before everybody got sick and denied, I got hurt, denied. I think I represent resiliency. More ways than others because I walked the halls of Congress for over a decade. And it wasn't just the Sedroga bill, it was 4 other bills, or in Albany, or in New Jersey, or in Michigan. So when you're told no, well, we can't help, but you don't take no for an answer, that's resilient. So I see in the breakout sessions, building resiliency and developing coping skills. Running my foundation is my coping skill. I was diagnosed by 4 doctors with post-traumatic. They told me I was batshit crazy. Maybe they're right, but I don't take medication. I don't cope with pain and suffering through medication. I want to be in pain. I might sound a little perverse, but pain is my driving force. Physically or mentally, I'm in pain. Yesterday morning, I had my hip drained after driving back from DC after 2.5 days. Then to go to a meeting and stay overnight in New York City to be here. That's resiliency. Then I see it says, living with loss, does time heal all wounds? I hope not, at least not for me. I don't want time to heal my wounds. It shouldn't. That's what makes us human. That's what humanity is. That you could take your pain and suffering and share with others. The true spirit of the human being is to feel what other people feel. If you are happy, I'm happy for you. If you were sad, I'm sad for you. We'll cope together. We'll move on together. If you lost a loved one in a car accident 3 years ago, you're not supposed to get over that. People always tell us in the 9/11 community, it's 17 years later, it's 14 years later, get over it, move on. That is a wound that will never heal, and it shouldn't heal. But it also shouldn't define you. You have a life to live. I always tell 9/11 responders, well, America forgot about us. No, they haven't. America's got enough shit on their plate to worry about right now. But when the anniversaries come, or the birthday anniversary, or the wedding anniversary, or the kid's anniversary, whatever the case may be, we're reminded of that horrific Tuesday morning. I have 2 anniversaries, 9/11 and 9/17 when I was hurt. But then I have anniversaries of my mother dying, my sister dying, and the 179 funerals that I've been to for 9/11 responders. Every day on my calendar is an anniversary. So I don't want to not move on. I do not want to not forget. It's what makes me who I am. And that might not work for everybody. But what I've learned since 9/11, that I laugh and cry every day, I had a great day. You know, before 9/11, I cried twice. I'm not making that up. Probably when the doctor smacked me and when my grandfather died. Since 9/11, I think I cried every day. I could watch a commercial and cry. It's okay. It's all right. The pleasure of working with Mary over the last several years, all the law firms, the Department of Justice, NIOSH. It's been a humbling experience. But I also now have the body of work to say what's wrong and what's right, where we are 17 years later. You know, when we got the bill renewed in 2015, they said, oh, great, we got 75 years of health care, free health care. I said, no, we got 75 years to get it right. Now we have 72 and a half. And we're still working on that. We're still advocating every day. But resiliency, you're all here because you sat in traffic. You all drove here. Many of you traveled further than others. That's resilient. So we're all in this together. We're all resilient. We're all human beings. And we're all going to have a great day. Thank you, Mary.